Welcome to the Daily Lie of Omission, where you see and hear what mainstream media doesn't want you to know. Today we'll be finishing up our report on the RNC convention in Cleveland, which I can only best characterize as much ado about nothing. We're going to start in the middle of our story and run nearly to the end. Then we'll go to the start and then back to the end. Then I want to share with you a story I don't want to say I stumbled upon, more of a case of being led to. Its value being, I think it helps bring into focus what has happened in America. Finally, we'll wrap up this segment with a look at the opportunity Donald Trump has before him, as well as the problem he faces, because make no mistake about it, the hurdle Donald Trump has to overcome is Donald Trump. I referenced the RNC convention in Cleveland as much ado about nothing because that's as good a description as any of the event. We'll go right to the streets because those are the events you never saw. And as you'll see, it was all much ado about nothing. But that's the purpose of these conventions, a dog and pony show, a diversion to keep America from really understanding what a free America really needs to know. In Cleveland, it all revolved around Public Square, an 8-acre park located due south of a government complex that meets up with the west end of Cleveland's deteriorating Euclid Street, anchored by the Cuyahoga Civil War Memorial that dominates the landscape. It's a beautiful edifice, and it was a great place to view the crowds, at least until they chased everyone off of it towards the end of the day. And that day was Tuesday, and with no exaggeration, the highlight of the week. And the guy that made everyone's day was Alex Jones, wading into the crowd with some superbers and a megaphone. I swear to you, God, that's the highlight. Here's Alex coming in. Here's Alex yelling through his bullhorn. And here's Alex leaving after giving Cleveland's finest an opportunity to show off their choreographic skills, both its foot and bicycle troops. The tall fellow in the white hat at the center is Chief Wilson, pretty decent fellow, but not orientated to giving interviews, just like everyone else.
Cleveland's finest.
Alex Jones seems to have a natural ability to get under a person's skin, as it got reported later that Yerk of the Turks, product of Al Gore television, later got into a fight with Alex and tried to scratch his eyes out. Like I said, much ado about nothing. There were some assault weapons around, but not a lot. Here we see two SWAT team members with M16s and a lot of ammo. And here's a civilian with an AK-47 strapped over his shoulder and a few loaded clips in his pockets. I would like to add that there was no live fire. Cleveland is not that big of a town. They did not have the police force to cover everything. At least not cover it the way Chief Wilson wanted to cover it. So they brought in officers from California, South Carolina, Indiana, and they brought in the Ohio State Police and officers from nearby Akron, as well as 20-some other states. All in all, it was more like a law enforcement convention than it was a convention of the Republican Party. At least from my perspective. One of the most impressive shows of force was the choreographing of putting police units into action, then relieving them in the heat. Here's an example of changing of the guard.
Everybody can get out, they take their turn.
And here's the showing of the bicycle force at what I called Euclid Park, where a planned 7 p.m. protest on Wednesday
I'm not sure
never
what time the race
materialized.
starts, but
And here's some bike and foot troops there to keep the Westminster Baptist Church of Kansas from getting beaten to a pulp.
they're going to do something now. You can see that they're...
Probably the favorite of everyone was the mounted police force.
horses
Even
are
the
being
horses had
outfitted
eye
for,
and nose protection. It's quite
shades.
apparent they pulled all stops to create this force, bringing in Forest Reserve employees to help supply horses and augment the equine force. One of the most amusing was this rather corpulent officer who had a hard time mounting, and once he did, his stirrups were too long for him, and he didn't even know it. I offered to shorten them for him, but I had little else to do, but he looked at me and then he looked away. You can mount a man on a horse. You can't keep him there. Here's some Secret Service types, and no, they do not give interviews either. In fact, getting an interview with a delegate or anyone else was a lesson in futility. Here's one with Miss Jacqueline Green of Lawyers Without Borders or some such thing. My other interview is with Harold from the Red Green Show, moonlighting as the PR man for Amnesty International. Getting a delegate to stand still for an interview in Cleveland was like pulling teeth,
Get these people to stop.
only harder. See that lady in the red dress?
If you remember that lady
She
that
came
went
by
in the
earlier,
red
trailing
dress?
well behind some suits that wouldn't wait for
There
her,
she is.
and said she was late, but she would come back
They
and
went
talk.
through the parking lot.
On the way back,
in
the
order
group
to
of
go
them
around
walked
me.
a half a block out of their way through a parking lot in order to avoid me.
It's crazy. If you
Suits.
remember that lady that went by
Delegates
in the
in
red
suits
dress?
don't talk to you. If they're with one of the
There she
lady
is.
delegates, who are always dressed to the
They went
nines,
through the parking
they ignore
lot
you like you're a
in
street
order to
vagrant
go
with
around me.
$3,000 camera and a $2,000 microphone. Go figure. Suits. Also in
Here
attendance
we are.
were a
Here's,
few
one
panel trucks
fella that
plying their wares, mostly for Hillary
to
from
know where he's
jail,
at or
a new
where
movie
he's,
about
but
the
he's
Clintons'
anywhere.
criminal operations, and a very disturbing one about abortion. Then abortion is always a very disturbing subject. Like I said, Tuesday was the peak, and from there it was all downhill. Here's a shot of a small parade of protesters going east on Euclid, being swallowed up by a canyon of empty buildings. But I don't want anyone to
Okay,
think
here
there
goes
weren't
the
moments
lemmings again.
of humor.
Everyone's
On
going
Wednesday,
down
people
the
were
street
so
over
desperate
there.
for a story that twice they went off
Not
running
quite
in
sure what's
pursuit of a
going on,
story.
but
First time was a
someone
tire
let us
blowout that
know
sent them
correctly.
running to the scene of a gunshot or an explosion, only to learn it was a
No one-
tire
there they
blowout.
go.
The cops
Okay,
were helping to
cameras,
change the
people
tire.
go. Yelling at
The
the
second
right
time
to the right.
came only a half an hour later,
People
shown
with
here.
microphones yelling to the left. I'm
was
not getting
just
dragged into
lemons.
this one. Fool me once, shame on me.
The second time was only a half hour later, shown
Fool me
here.
twice.
It was just lemmings running over the cliff. Finally, I did get one interview. He's a Texan from Houston. I couldn't help but give him his rein, let him run. He didn't let me down. I think I could have found someone from Montana. They would have given me an interview because they wore funny shirts and cowboy hats too. But I never ran into anyone from Montana.
You know how you've enjoyed your week here and how things have gone?
Well, we got here Sunday, and things are just great. The weather's great. The people of Cleveland are great. The police officers couldn't be more helpful, making us feel safe. Having a good convention. We nominated our president yesterday.
Right.
Yeah, we're all just excited about it.
How'd everything go in the convention? Everything pretty smooth, just like
we're
outside?
Pretty smooth, and, a little dust up here and there, but that's
Sure.
politics.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
We're like a family. Every now and then, we don't always get along, but we come back in the middle.
That's
and,
right.
Even if we disagree at the end of the day, we're gonna nominate this. We've nominated this man, and we're gonna elect this man.
There you go.
We're excited about that.
Well, hey, I appreciate you're
Thank
the
you.
first delegate that's actually taken the time to be interviewed. Thank you very
well,
much.
all right.
I appreciate it.
Have a great day.
Had to be a guy from Texas, wouldn't you know it?
So that brings us back to the start of the week, specifically the Speakers Forum at Public Square. Not that it was much of a Speakers Forum, because to speak, you had to sign up in May. And these are the two guys who ran this sham. Because it wasn't really a Speakers Forum. It was more a forum to keep people
Okay,
from
here's an
speaking.
amusing observation
Not that
here
the Speakers
in
Forum was ever
Cleveland.
listened to. Except on Monday.
You've got a public speaking.
Monday I had the
set
opportunity
up
to
here.
listen to John
To
Pudner of
publicly
Take
speak.
Back Our Republic out of Auburn, Alabama, regarding campaign finance reform. It's only a few minutes, so take a moment and give a listen, because in another world, what he has to say makes a lot of sense.
Give it back to the people. I think that's wonderful that you're willing to take that step. I learned when we launched the Dave Bratt race against Eric Cantor, the majority leader, 2 years ago. I learned right then that this issue is not an issue that divides progressives and conservatives. The idea of money in politics dominating from a few sources. It divides the people who make money off of a political industrial complex that goes from lobbying back through campaigns and the constituents back at home. That's where the dividing line is on this issue. I was in D.C. recently, and I got tracked down at the airport by someone who opposes disclosure laws, one of the leading opponents of it. And he tracked me down to ask me why I, as a conservative, would be teaming up with all these progressives, he said, on this issue. And I thought it was pretty evident. I said, I don't think it's in anyone's interest for a few special interests, billionaires, corporations, and unions to dominate the political process and take all the clout away from the people who are supposed to be represented by elected officials, their constituents. That's how the Constitution was written. Seemed pretty evident. The response surprised me. He said, you've got to be kidding. Anyone can participate in this system. Anyone can have influence. He said, anyone in America can give $1,200 to a cause if they really are concerned about $100 a month. A guy happened to be sitting at the table next to us, working guy, clearly a little dirty shirt. It turned out he was a pipe inspector, spun around and said, I'm sorry, I don't usually interrupt conversations, but I'm not usually inside the Beltway very often. Did you just say that any American could give $1,200 to any cause they wanted? It was disbelief, and this has put off. But this is what happens when you're getting that conclave in Washington. You don't understand how disenfranchised people are when it all becomes money. That person happened to be from Texas. They end up joining our Take Back Our Republic Texas chapter and getting it going now. And turned out he was a conservative. So we have crossed the aisle. We should have support back with the people back at home. We just need to translate that. So certainly there are going to be some different solutions on how you solve money in politics. There'll be people coming from different perspectives. But the first step of any alcoholic is to admit there's a problem. We need to start with saying there is a problem. That if transactional giving is enabling people to make a business investment in government and get back taxpayer funding, in essence, that should go for someone else, whether it be through regulation, taxes, etc., that's a bad system. So let's talk about a few points I think we can agree on. One, the best donor would be the average person living in a district who votes for that office. And to that end, we proposed a tax credit. This was the law through most of the 1980s, where someone giving a small contribution, $100, $200, can get it back in a tax credit. This used to be the law. How ironic that that was taken away, yet all the benefits from a billionaire giving to third parties were kept intact. This would empower, if each one of you were in essence holding a $200 contribution you could give to any official you wanted, that would make a huge difference in how they represented you. They'd start looking at their constituents back home. Secondly, we have to support more disclosure. Almost everyone across the board out in the population supports this. And as I mentioned, my friend at the airport who tracked me down didn't. We have to know where the money's coming from. At very least, let people be able to vote. If they know that someone's giving millions of dollars to a political effort, let them at least know that when they vote. And hey, if it's Tom Steyer or Michael Bloomberg, maybe you agree with them, fine. If it's Koch brothers, maybe you agree with them, maybe you disagree with them. Just let people know so they can at least cast that vote. And then finally, we have to stop foreign money. The avenues for foreign money are so easy now. There's even a ridiculous loophole in the way you can make credit card contributions where you don't have to verify any information. We have a bill in to try to stop that. It's an easy backdoor avenue for foreign money to come into the system. People told me when I proposed campaign finance legislation, I'd only have one Republican in all of Congress back it, a guy named Walter Jones in North Carolina. We took that common sense approach, created a bill, H.R. 4177. We've had 51 Republican members of Congress have signed it, in addition to all the Democrats who've signed it. So there are solutions out here, and while a lot of elected officials don't want to do this because they feel like this is the system they came out of, the pressure has to come from back home. They have to go home and hear from people that, why aren't you stopping this? Why am I not represented now? Why do polls show that elected officials react to how donors give but do not react to how their own constituents give? These are the things that have to be changed. So finally, I would ask everyone here to communicate. This is your chance. You've got a spotlight on you. This is our chance to point out. We've had a couple of polls recently that show almost 80% of conservatives, progressives, Republican, Democrats, etc. want disclosure, want money in politics fixed up. We just need to be loud enough to make sure some of those delegates who are meeting a few blocks away from here hear from you too during this next week, because some of them are with you. Don't be surprised. Thank you.
John wanted to change the system, but he didn't really mean to change the system, just that part of the system that revolves around campaign finance. The problem, as I tried to explain to John, is the unfortunate reality that no matter what he is able to do about campaign finance reform, it's really not going to stop the big money from wading in and dominating campaigns. Nope. The only way that's ever going to happen is to change the system so completely that big money can't buy their laws anymore. This chart shows how 90% of our laws are sold in America today. And it doesn't go through Congress. England voted for Brexit from the EU because Brussels wrote 55% of the laws governing England. No wonder the American people are no longer free. But that's what liberty legislation is all about, returning the power to make laws back to the Congress, where creating laws is a slow, deliberate, and public process. where buying a new law becomes much harder and very expensive, not greased and easy like it is today. And it's not so easy to buy your laws when dealing with the daily operating model of a state of liberty, and in that world, John Pudner's efforts would really pay off. But in the criminally insane state of America today, John's efforts are a bump in the road to our deep state's governing mafia. The truth is, no one can take a systemically failed daily operating model of government and finance and make it work until that system is removed and replaced. What is more important is history's definition of a governmental bankruptcy of the people. It's called a revolution. And that's where America is today. And it is a fact that you can't restructure a government bankruptcy by using the failed government as your template. It's like putting new wine into old skins. Sooner or later, but usually sooner, they eventually burst. Unfortunately, people don't look at our current affairs with the context of a revolution because they've never dealt with one. The problem is reality, because you either deal with reality or reality will deal with you. And that's the inconvenient problem with revolutions. Everyone is invited and attendance is mandatory. It's like you're in this big toilet and once the handle is jerked, everyone gets pulled into the vortex. Clearly, the biggest story I covered during the Republican convention was found about 40 miles west of Cleveland, along the coast of Lake Erie in a small town called Huron, Ohio. Here I stumbled upon the largest greenhouse I had ever seen. What was so unique about it were the trees going up through the glass, and it was clear the building had been abandoned years ago. I stopped to take some photographs when the owner drove up, and I met Ned Otto, the last Otto family member to work at the Otto tomato greenhouse. This is where we pick up the story. Hi, I'm here today with Ned Otto at the former Otto tomato greenhouse plant. And Ned, how you doing today?
Oh, pretty good.
That's good. Ed, you're telling me that you used to grow tomatoes here. How many tomatoes would you grow a year?
Oh, about 80,000 baskets.
80,000 baskets.
Yeah.
How much would that weigh? Just to give, I can't even imagine what 80,000 baskets looks like.
You know, we got, I don't know just how much. We go to the market in Cleveland. And,
Okay. Did you guys grow them year round?
yeah, mostly. Towards the end, we're getting short on the varieties. They didn't have good enough varieties to do it year round.
How many varieties did you guys grow?
Oh, probably half a dozen.
Half a dozen. Wow. And you had glass covering 5 acres.
Yeah.
And there's the chimney that where the smoke from the heaters, and you say the big green thing here up there is the old silo that held the coal that you burned.
Yeah.
And you said you burned
2,500 tons.
2,500 tons of coal a year to keep the tomatoes warm while you're growing them year round.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Now, Ned, tell me that you guys shut down the operation because the government had you. What was the problem?
They wanted our business. They, I don't know how to explain it. They just, I had a partner in I really to talk like sometimes.
Was it because of you were burning coal, or was it other reasons?
Because of the coal.
Oh, they wanted you to stop burning coal.
Yeah.
Did they give you any kind of alternatives for heat?
We could use gas, and that was way out of sight.
Oh, sure, the price.
Yeah.
Okay, they wanted you to quit burning coal. When did this happen? What year?
89. 1989.
In 1989. So when was the last time anybody grew tomatoes here?
88.
1988.
Wow. So all these trees have been growing here for about 20, 25 years?
Yeah.
Wow. And you had another plant, you said, down the street,
About 2 miles up the road.
2 miles up the road. And what did you grow there?
Same thing.
Tomatoes.
Yeah.
You must have supplied tomatoes for the entire Midwest.
No, not quite.
Just Ohio and Western New York?
Yeah, they were. Hard for me to talk now. I can't talk right now.
It just kind of still burns you.
Yeah,
Makes you angry
yeah.
still. How many people did you employ here?
Peak season was about 20, 25.
20, 25 people.
Yeah, and then
How many trucks would run out of here a day filled with tomatoes?
1 or 2.
1 or 2 trucks a day.
Yeah.
So a truck's about 40,000 pounds, 40 to 80,000 pounds you'd ship out every day of tomatoes.
Yeah.
Wow. That's absolutely unbelievable. Would you like to show us around a little bit?
Yeah, you can. You have to be careful of the glass don't come
Yeah,
out.
we won't go too far.
Yeah, there you go.
Let me grab the camera off of here and we'll take a walk.
Okay.
Due to technical difficulties, I'll narrate from here. These are the 2 main boilers. It took 2 men to keep these furnaces stoked, and that was 24 hours a day during the winter. Over here is the grading line that came from Florida and the citrus farms. It has a feed that is about 10 feet long and a run that goes down and back of about 30 feet each way. In true fashion, not only did the Ottos grow, pick, and grade their tomatoes, they also made the baskets that they were delivered in. It was a full-turned processing plant. You just got to see these picking carts. They manufactured their own custom carts, developed and made them here at Ottos, which the pickers would walk down the aisles using the kinetic energy like drywallers use their scaffolds today, only much narrower and on bicycle wheels. Come on, let's go take a look at the greenhouse. Got to be careful because there's a lot of glass on the ground. It's a deep green with tan vines and trunks, almost like a covered forest where little grows close to the ground because there is so little daylight down here. It's surreal with a deep sense of sadness. Special place that was once so filled with life. It seems now like such a tragic crime. Tragedy made all the more worse as self-sustaining farming is being embraced by millennial America. I mean, it's their world. They're inheriting our mistakes. Look down this corridor. I don't think it's even at the other end of this greenhouse. Every 40 feet or so, there would be a system of electric motors and gear reducers that once opened and shut the ventilation system. And according to Ned, once the tomatoes grew to about 20 feet, it was time to start taking them down, fumigate the ground, and replant the seedlings. This would generally take place in August. A lot of knowledge here. Well, there's the chimney. It's now being used by fishermen in Lake Erie as a landmark, which is just a few hundred yards behind me. There's a hole near the rim up there from lightning strike. Yeah, I know they're going to tear this down sometime soon. I hope they don't take the chimney. I think it's a historic landmark and certainly worthy of the register standards. You know what I find so compelling about this story is, and I want to share with you, was that in 1988 the federal government, under the guise of the U.S. EPA, operating under specific laws never passed by Congress, shut down the Otto tomato greenhouse by denying them the use of coal to heat their greenhouse without laws passed by Congress. And of course, without due process. Sure, they could use gas, but then they would be paying for the right to grow tomatoes. Lost were 25 good-paying jobs, an income stream to the community of over $1 million a year, and the knowledge necessary to grow our own food locally. Instead, today we get our tomatoes from Mexico. Now magnify this loss to America hundreds of thousands of times, repeated with companies that produce hundreds or thousands of times greater value and employ hundreds and thousands more Americans. Or at least they all used to. Why did the US EPA go after Ottos, one of the smallest users of coal? Well, it's because the people like Ottos were the low-hanging fruit and easiest to pick. because the Ottos didn't have the financial wherewithal to take on the federal government, nor hire lobbyists to create laws favorable to them. The U.S. EPA, wielding a mandate from Congress, then created the laws that are the responsibility of Congress, yet Congress took no part in their creation. Yeah, sure, I know all about necessary but not necessarily proper clause, as well as the sham ruling of McCulloch versus Maryland that made the necessary and proper clause not necessarily proper, which I explored in Volume 3 of the Daily Lie of Omission and is covered in my book. The simple truth is, if Congress can't handle the job, that job, unless specifically assigned to the Congress, at least according to the 10th Amendment, resides with the states and the people. I can't help but think that the state of Ohio would have taken much greater care in figuring out how to accommodate a mandate of Congress, the Otto family, the well-being of 25 employees, the citizens of Ohio, along with the gross domestic product of Ohio. Ask yourself if 50 states working on a problem will come up with a better plan than one federal agency. And while you're thinking about that, ask yourself if it's easier for a lobbyist to pay off 50 states or one federal government. Now, the people do not get abused like this in a state of liberty, but obviously this is not that kind of government America has today, and that is why America is in such a sorry state, or, in the parlance of a political scientist, a status state where the government rules over the people. This is the real story I want to share with everyone, and Otto's tells the story like no other, that an illegal and unconstitutional system devoid of due process and rule of law, which closed down the Ottos in 1989, has since grown and destroyed much of America until we've become like a hollowed-out watermelon, all rind and no fruit. And while the Ottos are just a small story, they were the seed, the template, if you will, of the system which, after 40 years of financialization and 25 years of an imperial presidency, has driven the citizens of America into bankruptcy and has not only brought the American people to their knees, but has thrown America headlong into a revolution. No one can revitalize such a system because it is the system that has gone bad. It is the system that must be removed. It is the system that must be changed. And this is the challenge that Donald Trump has before him. Does he have the vision and humility to deny himself the powers of an imperial presidency and restore the powers of Congress to the Congress, and by doing so, restore the rule of the people over their government? Or does he do as he says in his acceptance speech, that he is going to make the system work, yet no one can make a systemically failed system work? If he is determined to make the system work, he will force himself to become a tyrant in order to hold on to power. This will lead to his personal defeat, and America will descend into a violent revolution, because trying to make a failed system work is like putting new wine into old skins. They invariably burst. Or, if he can, put the Donald behind him and come to grips with history and rely instead upon the U.S. Constitution we have been given. He has the potential to become one of our greatest presidents. I think this is against his nature, because such power to such a man is such a tempting thing, yet still, but with the help of God, all things are possible. And why I am apprehensive of the Donald, it is the Hitlery that scares the living hell out of both me and the country. And that is what we will explore in our next report on the DNC. I call it the funeral in Philly.Fi. The story the MSM refuses to tell America, and it's the most extraordinary story you've ever heard. And the Daily Lie of Omission will share it fully with you. This concludes this episode of the Daily Lie of Omission. If you want to help restore the rule of law in America, make America great again, I invite you to take a look at www.scienceofliberty.us and read Liberty Legislation, a simple litmus test comprising 4 bills before Congress today and term limits that, if passed, would change overnight the entire daily operating model of both government and finance in America today back to a state of liberty. The single strategy of liberty legislation is one campaign to elect 535 candidates to Congress by electrifying 165 million registered voters to take back America and elect a new Congress, using liberty legislation to provide the necessary litmus test to anyone that wants our vote. It is open to any party. It is open to any color. It is open to any gender. We don't need candidates. We need the candidates' hearts and minds. And they must give it freely, else we will vote for someone who will, in their place, in Congress. If we elect a new Congress that will pass all 4 bills and get going on term limits, we will usher in a state of liberty, and with it, an era of bounty and justice for all. Liberty is what made America great in the first place, and is the only true and logical way to make America great again. If you'd like to help make a donation or buy a copy of the Science of Liberty, American Reformation, I would ask you to go to scienceofliberty.us. Here you'll find liberty legislation, and you could read for free the first 42 pages of the Science of Liberty for free. I can guarantee you will come away with a new understanding of the core driving problem we must all face together in America, as it is America's only solution. I encourage you to dial into YouTube and type in EANC.TV and hit enter, where you can watch every episode of the Daily Lie of Omission. While there, I would also ask you to click on subscribe in the lower part of the YouTube page so that every time the Daily Lie of Omission broadcasts, you will receive an email and a URL so you can catch every new episode. Then, tell your friends and ask them to tell their friends on Twitter, Facebook, email, et al., and tell them to register to vote. Start calling our congressman and senator and putting the bricks to them. Do they support liberty legislation? The answer must be yes, because everything else is a no. If they do, if they don't, then leave them and go find a candidate that will join with every American and make us all free. America has entered an age of revolution. I suggest you deal with the reality of revolution before the realities of a revolution deal with you. Because left to fester and grow, the only thing I can guarantee you is you are not going to like it. And that is the understatement of all time. Thanks for listening. I'm William W. Fawell. Surf's up, America.